The static of a shortwave radio fills a dimly lit room. It is 1990 and the Nobel Prize in Physics is being announced thousands of miles away in Sweden. In a small garage in Texas, a 9-year-old boy sits alone, crying because no one came to his listening party. But across town, an older man is also crying. Dr. John Sturgis sits in his living room, overwhelmed by a sudden crushing wave of emotion. He isn't weeping out of joy for the laureates, nor is he merely sad. He is experiencing a catastrophic psychological fracture. In this moment, the vast, beautiful, mathematically perfect universe he has dedicated his life to understanding feels infinitely large, and he feels terrifyingly small and untethered. Why does a man who understands the fundamental forces holding the cosmos together struggle so profoundly to find a force that can hold him to the world? When we are first introduced to Dr. John Burgess Sturgis, it is easy to categorize him as a benign, eccentric trope, the absent-minded professor who rides a bicycle, speaks with a peculiar cadence, and serves as an intellectual mirror for Sheldon Cooper. But beneath the quirky sweaters and gentle demeanor lies one of the most tragic and deeply human characters on television. Dr. Sturgis is a man trapped in the phantom zone between profound brilliance and debilitating isolation. His arc is not a simple story of a weird guy learning to fit in. It is a heartbreaking exploration of the cost of perfectionism, the burden of a divergent mind, and the invisible sacrifice of pushing love away to protect others from your own shadows. Throughout his time in Medford, Texas, Dr. Sturgis tries desperately to assimilate, to be a partner to Connie, a mentor to Sheldon, and a functional member of society. Yet he is constantly reminded that he is a guest in a world not built for him. This is the story of a man who spent his life studying the invisible tethers of the universe, only to realize he was floating in zero gravity all along. John's desire to prove his worth as a traditional masculine figure manifests in his desperate attempt to learn how to drive. For him, a driver's license isn't just about transportation, it's a desperate grasp at autonomy and a way to prove to Connie that he can be a caretaker, not just someone to be cared for. When the attempt ends in failure, the mask slips, revealing his deep-seated shame over his inability to master the basic life skills that come so easily to everyone else. This insecurity is magnified when confronted by the existence of Connie's other suitors. When John realizes he is competing with men who possess conventional charm and social ease, his reaction isn't just jealousy, it is existential panic. He intimately understands his own otherness, and he operates under the constant, agonizing assumption that it is only a matter of time before Connie realizes he is too difficult to love and replaces him with someone easier. Even when fully embraced by the Cooper family, John remains an observer rather than a participant. Placed at the Cooper dinner table, he is treated with a mixture of affection and bewilderment. He is a novelty. He contributes to the conversation, but his dialogue exists on a completely different frequency than the rest of the family. He is physically present, yet socially exiled, speaking a language only Sheldon truly understands. The unraveling begins subtly, disguised as mere eccentricity, before escalating into a dangerous detachment from reality. When John is found practicing Tai Chi on the roof of the university, it is framed as a whimsical moment to outsiders, but it is actually a terrifying display of a man entirely disconnected from the physical world. His mind has retreated inward, breaking the tethers of social and physical safety. The true cost of this fracture is revealed within the sterile walls of the psychiatric facility. When Connie visits him, the illusion of their equal partnership is shattered. The physical barrier between them is less significant than the psychological one. John is deeply medicated, subdued, and heartbreakingly aware of his condition. In this clinical environment, he is no longer the eccentric professor. He is a patient, stripped of his dignity and his identity. Even after his release, the shadow of the hospital looms over his attempts to reintegrate. He attempts to mask his fragility with excessive cheerfulness, bringing a pineapple to dinner as a symbol of hospitality. But the dinner is agonizingly tense. The ease they once shared is gone, replaced by a hypervigilant tiptoeing around his mental state. John realizes that he can leave the facility, but he cannot leave the stigma behind. The breakup is a masterclass in quiet devastation. John doesn't end the relationship because he stopped loving Connie. He ends it precisely because he loves her too much to let her become a full-time caretaker to a broken man. He masks his deep heartbreak with logical, clinical reasoning, breaking his own heart to ensure her freedom. The fallout of this sacrifice is a silent, enduring agony. Later, when John is forced to watch Connie move on with Dale, a man who represents the rugged, uncomplicated masculinity John lacks, he must swallow his pain. He engineered this outcome, yet the reality of seeing her happy with someone else is a daily reminder of his self-imposed exile. He is forced to haunt the edges of her life as a platonic friend. This pattern of self-exile eventually extends to his professional life. Believing there is nothing left for him in Medford but ghosts, John accepts a position at the Super Collider in Waxahachie. He frames it as a career triumph, but it is fundamentally an escape. He severs his remaining physical ties, retreating entirely into the world of theoretical physics where the rules are predictable, unlike the messy terrain of human affection. When Sheldon discovers John working at the grocery store, the power dynamic of their mentor-mentee relationship completely collapses. John is wearing a mundane uniform, sweeping floors, seemingly hollowed out. He doesn't show embarrassment. Instead, he shows a terrifying apathy. He has accepted his fall from grace not with anger, but with the quiet resignation of a man who always believed he was destined to lose everything anyway. Sheldon, unable to accept this tragic turn, begs John to return to science. But John actively resists. The grocery store is safe. In the grocery store, no one expects brilliance. There are no Nobel Prizes to lose, and there is no risk of a mental breakdown triggered by the agonizing pressure of theoretical physics. He chooses the isolation of mediocrity over the terrifying exposure of genius. Even when John eventually returns to the university, the man who comes back is fundamentally altered. He collaborates with Sheldon on the database project, retreating into the comforting rigidity of numbers. The youthful, eccentric optimism of his early seasons is replaced by a quiet, cautious existence. He is back in his office, but his spirit remains firmly walled off, engaging with the world only through the safe, sterile medium of data. To truly understand Dr. Sturgis, we have to look past the sitcom framing and examine him through the lens of psychology, specifically the concept of avoidant attachment fused with cognitive dissonance. John's core trauma is the irreconcilable gap between his immense cognitive processing power and his profound emotional fragility. His brain is a supercomputer that crashes whenever it tries to run the software of human intimacy. Because of his neurodivergence, John has spent his entire life receiving external feedback that he is strange, difficult, or fragile. Over decades, this creates a deeply ingrained cognitive schema. I am a burden. This schema triggers a cycle of learned helplessness. When things go wrong, when his mind breaks down, or when the Super Collider is canceled, John doesn't fight back. He immediately retreats, accepting defeat because defeat aligns with his internal belief that he was never meant to succeed in the real world anyway. This is why he pushes Connie away. In attachment theory, an avoidant individual will preemptively sever a connection when the vulnerability becomes too high, choosing the familiar pain of loneliness over the unpredictable terror of being abandoned. John's self-sabotage is an act of ultimate control. If he is the architect of his own isolation, then he cannot be caught off guard by rejection. We see this psychological defense mechanism beautifully and tragically illustrated when he interacts with Sheldon. John looks at Sheldon and sees the ghost of his own past, a brilliant, socially oblivious child hurtling toward a lonely adulthood. By mentoring Sheldon, John is engaging in a psychological phenomenon known as reparative altruism. He cannot fix his own life, so he pours his energy into ensuring Sheldon doesn't end up alone. He uses the safe distance of academia to forge a bond, buffering himself with textbooks and theories because direct emotional expression is too dangerous. Let's return to that dimly lit living room in 1990, with the shortwave radio crackling the news of the Nobel Prize. When John Sturgis breaks down weeping, he isn't just crying for the science he failed to achieve. The universe he dedicated his life to studying is expanding outward, infinitely and forever, moving further and further apart. In that moment, John realizes he is a reflection of that cosmos, drifting away from the people he loves, trapped in the cold vacuum of his own brilliant mind. But John Sturgis did not suffer for nothing. His invisible sacrifices, his heartbreaks, and his gentle guidance provided the exact blueprint Sheldon Cooper needed to survive his own genius. John walked through the dark so Sheldon could find the light. Dr. Sturgis may never have truly belonged in Medford or in Connie's arms, or even in the hallowed halls of academia. But in the end, he found his place as the architect of someone else's future. And perhaps for a man who spent his life studying the stars, being the gravity that holds someone else in orbit is belonging enough.